Before Amara became a full-time mother, her life was a whirlwind of responsibilities and ambition. In her late 20s, she worked as a customer service officer at a bank, a job she had fought hard to get. Every morning, she left the house before 7 a.m., dressed sharply in her navy blue skirt suit, a modest heel clicking against the tiled floor of the branch office. Her makeup was light, her hair neatly packed, and her smile always ready for customers, even on the most stressful days. She was known in the branch as one of the most diligent staff members. Reliable, sharp, and respectful, Amara often stayed back after hours to balance customer accounts or help a colleague finish up a task. Her manager, Mr. Badibo, noticed her commitment early on. "Amara," he would say during team meetings, "if we had 3 of you, I'd sleep well at night." But the job came with stress. Working in a Western bank wasn't for the faint-hearted. The targets were high, the queues long, and customers were often impatient. Yet Amara handled it all with calmness and grace, even during her pregnancy. When she became pregnant with her first child, Toby, she barely slowed down. Even as her belly grew round and heavy, she continued to report early, stayed organized, and remained efficient. She only allowed herself to sit more often and take shorter walks to the ATM area, but she refused to be idle. Her husband, Neca, was equally hard-working. He ran a small printing and graphics shop, Bold Prints, in town, where he designed wedding programs, flyers, ID cards, and business cards. His business was growing, but income was inconsistent. Some days were good, others dry. But Neca was always supportive. He would wake early to make her tea, help her zip her dress, or massage her feet in the evenings when she returned exhausted. Yet, no matter how hard they both worked, it never seemed to be enough. Relatives constantly knocked, either directly or through phone calls. One cousin needed money for school fees. An uncle had fallen sick in the village. Neca's younger brother wanted to start a barbing salon and believed his brother had made it. Amara's own younger sister was still in university, and she took on the burden of helping her with upkeep. "Amara, just $20 for handouts," her sister would text. "Neca, I need just $60 to balance for my house rent." His cousin would say, they couldn't say no, not always. They were the responsible couple, the ones everyone believed were doing better than most. But the truth was, their savings account rarely smiled. They had dreams, a bigger apartment, a second car, a baby nursery, but each month, something came up. Something always took from what they tried to keep. By her 7th month of pregnancy, Amara began to slow down. Her feet swelled more easily. She had short bursts of dizziness and some mild contractions, her boss noticed. "Amara, you're due in a few weeks," Mr. Badibo said one Thursday morning after a team meeting. "You've done more than enough. I'm giving you your maternity leave from now. Go home, rest, and prepare." Amara, always determined to finish what she started, protested. "Sir, I can still manage." "Madam Banker," he said with a smile. "Even machines overheat. Go and prepare for motherhood. You've earned it." She was grateful that morning. As she cleared her desk, her colleagues clapped and gave her small hugs and well wishes. Some teased her about cravings. Others asked for the baby's name. She left the bank that day with a bag full of office memories and a heart full of mixed emotions. Relief, gratitude, and fear. That night, Neca held her close. They sat on their worn couch, her head on his chest. "I wish we had more saved," she whispered. "We have each other," he said. "And we have love, we'll make it work." And they did. Amara gave birth to her son, Toby, on a humid Saturday morning at the General Hospital. It had been a long and exhausting labor, nearly 14 hours, but when she finally held her baby boy in her arms, pink, crying, and warm, everything else faded away. She looked at him through tired, teary eyes and whispered, "You're mine, you're everything." Neca was right there, overwhelmed with emotion. He kissed her forehead, then the baby's tiny fingers. "He looks like you," he whispered with a proud smile. "Strong." A few days later, they returned home. The flat was modest, but Neca had cleaned it thoroughly and even repainted the nursery wall a soft cream color. Balloons still floated lazily in corners, and a hand-drawn sign above the cot read, "Welcome home, baby Tobe." But the real challenge started after the first week. Tobe cried a lot. Amara was constantly tired. Her stitches hurt, breastfeeding was painful at first, and she could barely find time to sleep. Emeka helped as much as he could, but between work at the print shop and running errands, it wasn't enough. By the second week, Amara called her mother, Mama Neca. "Mama, please, I need help," she said over the phone, trying to keep her voice steady. "Just come for a few weeks. I don't think I can do this alone." Mama Neca, ever warm and strong-willed, arrived 2 days later from her village. She was in her early 60s, robust, with a quick wit and a firm presence. As soon as she stepped in, she took over like she had always been there. Bathing the baby, boiling hot water for sponge baths, preparing pap and soup, waking in the night when Amara couldn't. "Rest, my daughter," she would say, gently rubbing Amara's back. "Your body is still healing. Let me carry this small load." Amara was deeply grateful. For the first time since childbirth, she could breathe. She began to sleep for at least 4 hours at a stretch. Her milk flowed better. Her mood lifted. Weeks turned into months, and soon it was time to return to work. Unity Bank was waiting, and Amara, as tired as she still was, missed her structured life, missed putting on makeup, wearing a proper dress, and walking into a professional space. Resuming work was bittersweet. She cried the night before. "I'm scared," she told Emeka. "Leaving him behind. I feel like I'm abandoning him." "You're not," he said, holding her hand. "You're just trying to give him a better life." Amara returned to work on a Monday morning, dressed in a well-ironed blue gown, flat shoes, and minimal jewelry. Her colleagues welcomed her back with warm hugs and stories. Her desk was just how she left it. She smiled and settled in, but her heart never left the little boy sleeping back home. Back at the house, Mama Neca took charge with grace. She had her own system. Feedings every 2 hours, warm baths in the morning, lullabies in Igbo in the afternoon. She was old school, no diapers during the day, only clean wrappers and traditional baby oil. She sang to Tobe, spoke to him like he was an adult, and taught him little routines. But as the months passed, little cracks began to show. Amara would return home some evenings and feel a pang of guilt when her son smiled more at her mother than at her. "Has he forgotten me already?" she once whispered as she watched her mother rock Tobe to sleep, and there were subtle disagreements too. "Mama, I don't want to give him OG every morning," Amara said one evening, placing a can of infant formula on the table. "OG has fed children for generations," her mother replied gently but firmly. "This foreign thing you people now prefer, it's not always better. But it's what his doctor recommended." They didn't argue much, but Amara felt the tension quietly growing. She was grateful, deeply so, but she also wanted to raise her child her own way. Still, she said nothing. Her mother had put her own life on hold to help, and Amara wasn't ready to hurt her feelings. The most painful day came when Amara returned home early one afternoon to surprise her mother and son. As she opened the door, she heard laughter. Peeking in, she saw her mother on the floor, bouncing Tobe on her lap, and singing in a loud, silly voice that made him giggle uncontrollably. It was a beautiful sight, but something inside Amara cracked. She walked into her room, shut the door, and cried. She was missing it, the giggles, the first-time reactions, the bonding. Her mother was creating those memories with her child, while she was stuck behind a desk, typing emails and chasing customer complaints. Later that night, she brought it up gently. "Mama, I think I might ask for part-time. Maybe come home earlier in the day." Her mother looked at her, understanding already in her eyes. "You miss him. You're a good mother, Amara," Mama Neca said, reaching across the table. "And you're doing what's best. But if you want to come back and take over, I will step aside. That boy is yours to raise." Tears rolled down Amara's cheeks. It was the most affirming thing she had heard in months. Eventually, Amara arranged to work reduced hours for a while. She came home earlier, began doing the baths herself, rocking Tobe to sleep again. Her mother stayed for a few more months, easing the transition, then returned to the village with hugs and blessings, leaving Amara with a stronger heart and a deeper sense of motherhood. When Mama Neca finally returned to the village, it felt like the closing of a chapter in Amara's life. The chapter of early motherhood filled with constant guidance, dependence, and occasional tension. Her mother had been a pillar of strength, but now it was Amara's turn to stand fully in her role as both a wife and mother. The house felt quieter, emptier at first. Toby seemed to notice her absence. He cried a little more for the first few days, especially in the evenings when he was used to Mama's warm hands and lullabies, but slowly, he adjusted, and so did Amara. With her mother gone, something blossomed in her. A deeper sense of ownership and confidence. She was no longer just following routines passed down. She was creating her own. Amara's love for her son deepened in ways she couldn't explain. She began to understand his moods, his cries, and even his babbling sounds. She bathed him in the evenings, made funny faces while feeding him, and kissed his soft cheeks until he giggled. Every moment became sacred, even the sleepless nights and the messy diapers, and her relationship with Neca, her husband, shifted too. With fewer people in the house and more privacy, they rediscovered their intimacy. She started making conscious efforts to spend time with him at night. Not just lying beside him in bed, but really being present. They would talk about their day, laugh quietly while watching old movies, and sometimes just lie silently, holding hands and listening to Toby's soft breathing from the next room. One night, as Neca massaged her shoulders after a long day at work, Amara looked at him and smiled. "I didn't know I could love you more than I already did," she whispered. Neca chuckled. "You've changed, Amma, in the best way. You've grown into this quiet strength." She leaned back into him. "I had to. For him. For us." Balancing work and home wasn't easy, but Amara handled it with grace. She would rise early, sometimes before the sun, to prepare Toby's bag, express milk, and get ready for the office. After work, she'd rush home, never lingering at the bank longer than necessary. Her colleagues noticed the difference in her. "You're glowing these days," one of them commented. "Motherhood suits you." But it wasn't just motherhood, it was purpose. Amara was now a woman whose heart beat for more than her own dreams. She was building a family, and that made every sacrifice worthwhile. Her mother, ever faithful, called almost every evening from the village. "How's my grandson?" she'd ask, her voice thick with love. "He's strong, Mama," Amara would reply, smiling. "He took his first steps today." Mama Neca would laugh and clap over the phone, full of joy. "That boy is destined for greatness, just like his mother." They would talk for minutes, sometimes hours, about baby food, growing teeth, or Neca's business. Though far away, her mother remained a steady presence, a comforting voice that reminded Amara of her roots. And with time, Amara found her rhythm. Mornings were for hustle, evenings for motherhood, and nights for love. Some days were harder than others. Teething fevers, work deadlines, unpaid bills, but she always made room for gratitude. She became the woman she had dreamed of being. One who could walk into a bank office with confidence, rock her son to sleep with tenderness, and love her husband without neglect. That season became her strength, a golden thread she would later look back on as the time her family truly came alive. Not because things were perfect, but because she chose to be present in all the little imperfect moments. And every night, as she knelt beside the bed to whisper a short prayer before lying down beside Neca, her final words were always, "Thank you, Lord, for this peace." When Toby was barely a year old, still wobbling around on his chubby legs and mumbling half-formed words, Amara began to notice the familiar signs creeping back into her body. It started with exhaustion, not just the kind that came from chasing after a toddler or working full-time at the bank, but a deep, dragging tiredness that clung to her even after a full night's sleep. Then came the breast tenderness. Sharp, achy pangs that reminded her too much of what she felt before her first pregnancy. She also noticed her sense of smell had become unusually sharp. The scent of fried oil, even from the neighbor's kitchen, suddenly turned her stomach. First, she brushed it aside. Maybe it's stress, she thought. Work had been intense lately, and Toby was entering a clingy phase. He wanted to be carried constantly, cried when she left the room, and refused to sleep unless her chest was his pillow. But there was another reason why the thought of pregnancy lingered in her mind. Amara and Emeka had been especially intimate in recent weeks. Their nights were full, not just with whispers and laughter but with passionate moments that felt almost like a rediscovery. With Toby sleeping longer stretches at night, they had more time to themselves. There were evenings when Amara would light a scented candle in their bedroom, dress in something soft and alluring, and pull Emeka into their private world. A world where the chaos of parenting faded, and they could just be. And Emeka, for all his long days at the print shop, was never too tired for her. Their love life had deepened after Toby's birth. Not just physically, but emotionally. They were closer, more connected. It wasn't just about desire, it was about gratitude and shared resilience. So when Amara began feeling bloated and nauseous, she didn't need a test to tell her what she already knew. One morning, standing in the bathroom with a towel wrapped around her, she stared at her reflection in the mirror. Her skin had that subtle glow again, the one that came before she started showing. Her period was just a few days late, but her instincts were louder than any calendar. She sighed and placed a hand on her still flat belly. "I know you're here." Later that day, she went to a nearby pharmacy and picked up a pregnancy test, even though she was nearly certain of the result. When she got home and peed on the strip, it didn't even take the full 5 minutes. The 2 pink lines appeared quickly, bold, unmistakable. She sat quietly on the edge of the bed, heart pounding. Not out of fear, but out of sheer surprise. Another baby. Already, Toby was still so little. His cot still stood beside their bed. He hadn't even been weaned yet. And now, another child was growing inside her. When Emeka got home that evening, sweaty from work but smiling as usual, she didn't speak immediately. She waited until they had finished dinner and Toby was fast asleep. Then she took his hand and placed it gently on her stomach. He looked at her, confused. "What? I think we're doing this again," she said softly. His eyes widened. "Wait, you mean?" She nodded. There was a long pause before Emeka grinned, his face lighting up like the day he first held Toby. "God, Ama, really?" She nodded again, this time through tears. And just like that, they were on another journey. Unexpected, unplanned, but full of the same love and determination that had seen them through the first. Though the thought of raising 2 children under 2 years old was daunting, Amara found comfort in the timing. Yes, it would be hard. Yes, she would be stretched, but her heart was ready. Their home was filled with love, and this second child, like the first, was already deeply wanted. The next day, she called her mother. "Mama," she said, laughing nervously. "You might want to keep your bag packed. You're coming back sooner than you thought." As Amara's belly grew rounder and heavier with each passing month, the reality of having a second child so soon after Toby began to set in. By the time she entered her 3rd trimester, Toby was barely 18 months old. Curious, playful, and full of energy. He ran around the house babbling in half-words, pulling on her wrapper, or dragging his tiny toy car across the floor. She loved watching him explore the world, but chasing after him with her swollen feet became more exhausting by the day. So when her due date drew near, Amara did what she knew was right. She called her mother. "Mama," she said over the phone, already breathless from walking into the kitchen. "It's time. Please come." Mama Neca laughed from the other end of the line, already expecting the call. "I was just waiting for you to say the word. Let me pack my bag. I'll be there tomorrow." True to her promise, Mama arrived the next morning with her travel bag, a sack of fresh vegetables from the village, and a warm hug that made Amara feel like a child again. She immediately took over the kitchen, cleaned the corners Amara hadn't reached in weeks, and kept an eye on Toby, who seemed to have grown even more restless, sensing change was coming. Small man," Mama would say as Toby ran past her legs. "You better calm down before your little sister arrives and takes all the attention." Toby didn't understand yet, but he laughed whenever his grandmother called him Big Brother. Then one evening, just after Amara had finished her dinner, the contractions started. They were stronger than the first time, sharper and more insistent. Amara tried to breathe through them, gripping the armrest of the sofa. Mama Neca, ever alert, noticed the subtle shift in her daughter's face. "It's time, isn't it?" Amara nodded, beads of sweat already forming on her forehead. Mama quickly packed a small hospital bag and called Neca, who rushed back from the shop. Within the hour, they were on their way to the hospital. The labor wasn't easy. It was longer than her first, and this time, Amara felt every push deep in her bones. But when the cries of a newborn girl filled the maternity ward in the early hours of the morning, Amara exhaled through her tears. "She's here," she whispered. The midwife gently placed the baby on her chest. A tiny, wrinkled, squirming girl with thick black hair and a surprisingly strong grip for someone so small. Neca stood beside her, overwhelmed and smiling, tears glistening in his eyes. "She looks like you and Toby," he said. "Same little nose." Amara looked at her daughter and whispered, "You are so loved already." They named her Nora, short for Nora, in honor of both grandmothers. When they brought baby Nora home a few days later, the whole house felt different, softer, warmer, and Toby was fascinated. At first, he stood back, watching as the baby lay in her cot, wrapped in soft yellow blankets. He pointed and asked, "Baby?" "Yes, baby Nora," Amara said, kneeling beside him. "Your little sister." He blinked, then shuffled closer. Carefully, he touched her tiny fingers, which curled instinctively around his. "She's small," he whispered. Amara smiled. "You were once that small too." From that day on, Toby became her self-appointed big brother. Every morning, he would run to her cot, peek in, and announce, "She's awake." Whether she was crying or just stretching, he wanted to be the first to see her. He brought her his toys, even tried to share his snacks, though Amara had to explain several times that babies don't eat biscuits yet. Mama Neca was delighted. "See how he's already protecting her," she said, watching them one afternoon as Toby rocked the baby's chair gently. This girl came with peace. And it was true. As chaotic as it was to have 2 children under 2, something about Nora's arrival settled the home in a new way. Amara felt more complete, more sure of herself as a mother. The second time around, she wasn't as afraid. She was still tired, very, but she knew what to expect. She knew when to nap, how to soothe colic, how to read her baby's cues. And now, with her mother back in the house and Neca's unwavering support, Amara didn't feel like she was drowning. She was thriving, balancing late-night feedings with bedtime stories for Toby, cuddles with Nora, and gentle kisses for Neca after the children had finally gone to sleep. Some nights, as she stood in the doorway watching Neca playing on the floor with Toby and Nora cooing softly in her crib, Amara would quietly whisper to herself, "This is what fullness feels like." 2 children, a home filled with love, and a heart that had expanded in ways she never imagined. When Nora was just a little over 4 months old and had begun cooing, smiling, and holding her head steadily, Amara made the difficult decision to return to work. It wasn't easy, not emotionally and certainly not physically, but she knew the importance of her role at the bank, especially now that her responsibilities at home had grown. Toby was barely 2, Nora was still being breastfed, and the family's financial needs were increasing. Diapers, baby formula, creche plans, bills, everything had doubled. Thankfully, her mother was still around. Mama Neca had stayed back after Nora's birth, knowing the workload would be heavier this time. She was as steady and dependable as ever, the silent engine that kept the home running. Every morning, she would help Amara express breast milk, bathe the children, and prepare light meals before Amara rushed out the door in her crisp bank uniform, heels in hand, and heart still tethered to her babies at home. Amara resumed her position at Unity Bank quietly, almost without fanfare. But on her second week back, something unexpected happened. During a Monday morning staff briefing, her branch manager, Mr. Gbadebo, made an announcement. "I have good news," he said, glancing around the room. "We've reviewed the performance reports, and based on her consistency, professionalism, and the way she's handled both customer relationships and internal processes, even through maternity, Amara has been promoted to team lead, customer services." There was a moment of stunned silence before the room erupted into applause. Amara was too shocked to speak at first. Her eyes widened, her breath caught in her throat, and then slowly, a smile formed. She stood, humbled, and gave a quiet, "Thank you, sir. Thank you, everyone." Later that day, Mr. Gbadibo called her into his office. "I've watched you since the day you joined this branch. Even with the challenges of motherhood, you've shown excellence. I want you to know you earned this." The promotion came with a modest salary increase, not life-changing, but enough to ease the pressure a little at home. More importantly, it came with new responsibilities. She was now overseeing a small team, managing internal reports, resolving more complex customer issues, and leading weekly performance reviews. Instead of feeling overwhelmed, Amara felt inspired. She began to make better use of her time. She cut down unnecessary social media scrolling, packed her lunch the night before to save money and time, and used her break hours to check in on the children. In the mornings, she would wake up before sunrise, prepare baby food, feed Nora, and play with Toby for a few precious minutes before dressing up for work. Her days became fuller, carefully carved between motherhood and leadership, but she managed them with grace. Every evening, she returned home to find Nora freshly bathed and smiling in her mother's arms, and Toby running to the door yelling, "Mummy's home!" She'd scoop them up, shower them with kisses, and then go into the kitchen to help with dinner or chat with her mother over a steaming pot of soup. "Mama," she said one evening while they were peeling yams together, "I didn't know I had this strength in me." Her mother smiled knowingly. "You didn't need to know. It was always there. It just waited for its season." At night, after the children had gone to bed, Amara and Neca often sat on the veranda, talking softly over a cup of tea. She'd share stories from work, how one junior staff was improving, or how a customer wrote a letter of commendation. Neca, ever supportive, would nod proudly and tell her, "You were made for more than one role. Wife, mother, leader. You're doing it all." And she was. Her promotion didn't just elevate her professionally. It deepened her sense of purpose. It reminded her that she was more than just a woman who had put her dreams on hold for motherhood. She was a woman living in balance, giving her best to her family and her future. In that season of life, with her mother by her side, her children healthy, and her career advancing, Amara felt deeply fulfilled. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was rising quietly and steadily, like the woman she had always dreamed of becoming. When Mama Neca finally packed her bags to return to the village, it felt like the end of an era in Amara's home. Toby was now 5, tall for his age, inquisitive and energetic. His babyish chubbiness had given way to lanky limbs and a curious mind. Nora, 3, was just as sharp, bubbly, talkative, and always mimicking her big brother. With both of them growing fast and beginning to understand the world around them, Amara's days became a careful dance between responsibility and routine. Now back to handling everything on her own. Preparing meals, ironing uniforms, packing school bags, and still reporting to the bank early. Amara had to adjust. Time in the mornings became her biggest enemy. Every minute was precious. So to save time, she decided to begin bathing the children together, just like she had done when they were younger. It seemed harmless at first. Toby and Nora would climb into the bath together, and she'd pour warm water on them, soap them up one after the other, rinse, dry, and dress them quickly. It saved her nearly 20 minutes each morning. They'd splash water, giggle, sing rhymes, and argue over who would hold the sponge first. It was efficient, innocent, but as the weeks passed, Amara began noticing subtle shifts. In the weeks leading up to the morning Toby asked his mother that question about their bodies. A quiet curiosity had already been growing inside him. Toby, at 5 years old, was no longer just a child who played and laughed without a care. He was entering that natural, inquisitive stage of childhood where everything had to make sense. And because children observe more than they speak, he had spent several mornings silently studying the differences between his body and Nora's whenever they bathed together. Every time Amara poured warm water over their little heads, humming softly and moving with the speed of a working mother pressed for time, Toby would glance at his sister and then back at himself. His mind would wander. Why is mine long? Why does hers look like a small line? It didn't confuse him at first. After all, Nora was smaller and younger. But as the days went by, and Nora grew taller, began speaking more clearly, and even learned how to wear her shoes without help, Toby started to notice something that didn't make sense to him. His own private part, the one his mummy told him to always keep clean and private, hung differently. It was long, soft sometimes, and wrinkly, but Nora's it never changed. It remained small and tucked in no matter how many weeks passed. In his little mind, he figured it was just a matter of time. Maybe she's not old enough yet. Maybe it will start growing next month. Or maybe when she turns 4. He thought one morning as he rinsed the soap off his arms and peeked at her again while she sang to herself, completely unaware of his confusion. But as days turned into weeks and nothing changed, Toby became more curious, and then confused. And slowly, the confusion turned into worry. One morning, while scrubbing Nora's back, she overheard Toby ask, "Mummy, why does Nora's chest look different from mine?" She froze slightly, then recovered with a casual laugh. "Because she's a girl, darling. Girls have different bodies." "But why?" he pressed, squinting curiously. "Because God made girls and boys different," she said quickly, trying not to let her voice betray her sudden discomfort. One night, after bath time, he sat on the edge of the bed in his small Spider-Man pajamas, staring at the floor. Amara, folding school uniforms at the corner of the room, noticed his unusual stillness. "Toby, are you okay?" she asked gently. He shrugged. "Mummy, I'm just thinking." "Thinking about what?" she asked, sitting beside him. He fidgeted a bit, then looked up, eyes wide with an honesty only children possess. "Mummy, why hasn't Nora's private part started growing long like mine?" Amara blinked. For a second, her breath caught in her throat. She looked at her son, sweet, thoughtful, and completely sincere, and realized he had been carrying that question for a while. She saw the seriousness in his face, not embarrassment, not mischief, just a child trying to understand the world in his own innocent way. She smiled softly and placed a hand on his back. "That's a very good question, sweetheart. I'm glad you asked me." He looked relieved, as if he had finally let go of a puzzle he'd been trying to solve in secret. "You see," she began carefully, "God made boys and girls different. Your body is different from Nora's, not because she hasn't grown yet, but because she's a girl. Girls don't grow private parts like boys do. They stay like that, and it's perfectly normal. It's how girls are made." Toby's eyebrows furrowed. "So it will never be like mine?" She shook her head gently. "No, it won't. But her body is beautiful and special, just like yours is. Boys and girls have different bodies, but they're both important." He was quiet for a while, soaking in the answer. Then he nodded slowly. "Oh, okay. I didn't know. I thought maybe hers was taking time." Amara chuckled quietly and kissed the top of his head. "No, my love. Hers is just fine the way it is." That night, as she lay in bed beside Neca, she told him about the conversation. "He asked you that?" Neca said, surprised. "He's already noticing those things?" Amara nodded. "Children notice more than we think. I'm just glad he asked me, instead of learning from somewhere else." They both lay in silence for a moment, reflecting. "We're entering a new season, Neca," Amara whispered. "One where we'll have to teach them about more than just saying, please and thank you. Now it's about their identity, their understanding of themselves, their bodies." Neca sighed deeply. "It's scary, but also kind of beautiful." And it was. In that simple moment, Amara realized something. Motherhood wasn't just about feeding, bathing, and schooling. It was about creating a safe space for curiosity to meet truth. A space where even the most awkward questions had gentle, honest answers. From that day on, she began to approach parenting with a new lens, not just as a caregiver, but as a teacher of life. And Toby, having found comfort in his mother's explanation, no longer wondered in silence, because he now knew some questions aren't silly. They're just waiting for the right answer. The next week, while she was bathing both, She caught Nora giggling and pointing at Toby's private part, shouting, "It's funny. Mine is not like that." Toby didn't laugh back. He quickly turned away and shouted, "Stop looking at me." It hit Amara like a wave. Her children were no longer toddlers. They were growing, observing, and beginning to internalize what they saw. What used to be innocent now came with questions, comparisons, and awkward curiosity. That night, she sat alone at the dining table long after the children had gone to bed. Her head rested in her palm, and her mind replayed the small signs she had missed. She thought of her own childhood, how early body awareness began, how quickly innocence faded once curiosity kicked in. It wasn't about shame. It was about privacy, identity, and boundaries. She knew it was time to make a change. From that day on, Amara reorganized her mornings. She woke up 30 minutes earlier, tired but determined. She bathed Nora first, braided her hair quickly, then handed her over to her cartoon while she bathed Toby. It was harder, yes, slower, but it felt right. And with the separate baths came more teaching moments. Amara began to explain, in simple, age-appropriate terms, about private parts, about how every child has a unique body, and how everyone deserves privacy and respect. She wasn't just bathing her kids anymore. She was raising them to understand their bodies, their dignity, and the difference between curiosity and boundaries. Weeks later, one of her friends from the bank, Chisholm, visited and saw the way Amara managed both work and parenting. "How do you do it?" she asked, shaking her head with admiration. "2 kids, full-time job, no nanny? You make it look easy." Amara smiled faintly. "It's not easy. I just take it one choice at a time." She didn't go into detail about the rushed mornings, the awkward questions, or the quiet moments of reflection, but she knew deep inside. She was doing her best. And that was enough. Each new season of parenting brought new challenges, and Amara was learning that love wasn't just hugs and kisses. It was also adaptation, awareness, and having the courage to change when something no longer served her children's growth. And so, as the sun rose each day, Amara rose with it. A little earlier, a little wiser, and always ready to walk the road of motherhood with grace. Now it was about preparing their minds, shaping their understanding of themselves and the world around them, helping them understand what was safe, what was right, and what was theirs to protect. It began one Saturday morning. The house was quiet. Neca had gone to the shop early to meet a customer, and the children were seated on the living room rug, playing with building blocks and toy animals. Amara was sweeping, but her mind was replaying something Toby had asked the day before while getting dressed. "Mummy, when will Nora start growing chest like yours?" She realized, then, that these questions would keep coming. And rather than wait for another one to catch her off guard, she decided it was time to talk to them. Clearly, gently, and truthfully. After breakfast, she sat both of them on the couch. Nora climbed onto her lap while Toby leaned against her side. "My babies," she said, smiling, "I want to talk to you about something important, about your bodies." Toby looked up with interest, and Nora blinked curiously, clutching her stuffed bunny. "You know how we've talked before about boys and girls being different?" Toby nodded. "Yes, you said girls don't grow like boys." "Exactly," Amara said. "That's because God made boys and girls with different bodies. Boys have what we call a penis and girls have what we call a vagina. Those are called private parts." Nora giggled at the word, and Toby looked slightly amused but serious. Amara smiled. "It's okay to laugh, but we call them that because they're private, special. They're not for showing to others, and they're not for others to touch. Only Mummy or Daddy can help clean you there when you're little, but as you grow, you'll be doing it yourself. No one else should touch those places. Not even friends. Not even adults." Toby raised a hand like he was in school. "What if someone tries?" Amara's voice became firm. "You say no, loudly, and come straight to me or Daddy. You tell us immediately. You're allowed to say no if someone tries to touch you in a way you don't like, even if they say it's a secret or tell you not to tell anybody." Nora, still little but surprisingly alert, looked up. "So, my bum is private too?" "Yes, my darling," Amara said. hugging her gently. Your whole body belongs to you. And you, Toby, your body belongs to you. Then she looked at Toby directly. You're the big brother. Do you know what that means? He nodded proudly. I protect Nora. That's right. You look out for her at school. When you're playing, even when mommy or daddy isn't around. You help keep her safe. Not because she's weak, but because sometimes girls need protection, and boys are naturally stronger. But girls are smart too, right? Nora added quickly. Amara laughed. Yes, very smart. Girls are strong too. But boys and girls are strong in different ways. What matters is you help each other and always treat each other with kindness. She paused, letting the message sink in. You can always come to me, she said softly. Any question, any problem, no matter how small. I will always listen. Always. That night, Amara tucked them into bed with a full heart. Toby gave her an extra long hug and whispered, I'll always protect Nora, Mummy. I promise. And Nora, her small arms wrapped around her bunny, smiled sleepily. And I'll tell you if anyone tries to touch me. Amara walked back to her room that night feeling deeply at peace. The conversation wasn't perfect, they were still small, and she would have to repeat it again and again in different ways as they grew older. But this was the start. She had planted the seeds of awareness, of boundaries, of respect, and of safety. In a world full of noise, confusion, and unseen dangers, Amara was determined that her children would not walk in ignorance. They would walk in wisdom and confidence. Because love wasn't just providing for them, it was equipping them. As the years passed, the seasons of motherhood shifted once again for Amara. Toby was now almost 10 years old, tall for his age, with strong legs and a voice that was beginning to lose its soft, baby tone. His mind was sharper too, more private, more self-aware. Gone were the days when he ran into the bathroom, giggling with Nora or sat beside Amara asking innocent, wide-eyed questions about why boys and girls looked different. Those questions had quietly stopped coming around the time Amara began bathing them separately, a decision that had changed more than just their morning routine. It marked the beginning of personal space, of privacy, of independence. And now that independence had bloomed fully. Toby no longer needed reminders to bathe. In fact, he preferred to do it alone. He'd pick out his clothes the night before, lay them neatly at the edge of the bed, and lock the bathroom door behind him, something he never used to do. At first, Amara would tap on the door gently. Toby, are you okay in there? Yes, Mummy, he'd reply quickly, a bit embarrassed. I'm fine. She understood. She respected it. Then one day, while she was folding laundry in her room, Toby came out of the bathroom wrapped in a towel, drying his hair. She glanced up and noticed it immediately, not with surprise, but with quiet acknowledgement. Toby is growing. She hadn't expected it quite so soon, but there it was, the soft sprouting of hair around his private area. It startled her only for a second, not because it was abnormal, but because it reminded her how quickly time had passed. It felt like just yesterday he was asking, why is mine long and Nora's not? She didn't say anything in that moment. She didn't need to. Toby noticed her glance and quickly adjusted his towel. Looking away, a bit shy, that alone told her everything she needed to know. He was entering the next stage, puberty. Quietly, privately, and with a growing awareness of himself. Later that evening, she called him gently into the room after Nora had fallen asleep. He came in slowly, standing at the door like he already sensed a talk was coming. Toby, she said kindly, patting the bed beside her. Come. Sit with me. He did. She placed a hand on his shoulder. You're growing. I've noticed. And that's a good thing. You're becoming a young man. He smiled nervously, eyes darting to the floor. It's normal to start seeing changes. Hair in new places, a deeper voice, maybe even mood swings. It might feel strange sometimes, but it means your body is working just as it should. He nodded slowly, still quiet. You're old enough now to bathe yourself, and I see you're already doing that. I'm proud of you. That made him smile a little more. But also, she added, if you ever feel confused or need to ask questions about your body, your feelings, or even things you see or hear from friends, come to me or Daddy. No shame, no fear. Okay? Toby nodded. Okay, Mummy. One more thing, she said, lowering her voice gently. You're strong now, tall and smart. But always remember, strength is not just in the body. It's in how you carry yourself, how you respect girls, protect your sister, and make good choices. I will, he said softly, this time looking into her eyes. Amara smiled, pulled him close for a side hug, and kissed the top of his head. Though he squirmed a little, pretending to hate it, she let him go, watching as he walked out of the room. Not a little boy anymore, but not quite a man yet either. He was in between, and Amara knew that from now on, her role wasn't to hold his hand as tightly as before, but to walk beside him, giving him space to grow, while remaining the safe place he could always return to. Her little boy was becoming a young man, and she was becoming the kind of mother who understood when to step back, and when to lean in just enough to remind him, you are never alone. Kindly like, share, and subscribe for more amazing stories.